Okay. Okay, hello everybody. Thank you very much. It looks like we're starting on time. Hooray! And because it's so warm down here, we thought we'd all have a swim first. So if you'd like to get ready to go in the lake, that would be great. No, not really. We're gonna move on to the first panel discussion. So there's going to be 2 panel discussions in the next hour and a half. The first one will last 45 minutes. The second will also last 45 minutes. Geza is the moderator for the first one, and the subject matter is broadly curatorship and programming. And then Thomas will be the moderator for the second discussion, which will follow on more or less immediately, but obviously there'll be a departure from the stage of this panel and an arrival at the stage of the other panel. So there'll be a couple of minutes while we set up for the next part of the panel discussions. And the second one will be dealing with languages, the kind of trans-international issues. And actually, there was a very big group for that kind of discussion in this afternoon's session in open space. So it clearly is quite an important subject. So we've got curatorship and programming first, and then Thomas will be leading the panel for the next part, the languages part. Okay, I'm not going to take any more time. I'm going to, sorry, there will be some time for reactions and comments and questions from the group, which is what this microphone is for, ultimately. All right, I'll hand over to Geza.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dick Robertson, and it's nice to see you all here. I think I've never been in such a beautiful setting for a panel talk. So really amazing. My name is Geza Schneider. I'm the director of Literaturhaus Zürich and part of the curating team of this festival, Acting Through Language, mit Sprache handeln. I'd like to welcome the people in the stream as well. And I'd like to welcome warmly our panel participants. It's Ilke Froyen, Sophia Grasper, Yana, Genova, and Inez Boogaarts. The subject from this afternoon, as we heard, is curatorship and programming. And perhaps before going there into a little bit of more detail on what we will discuss, we decided that each of you will present themselves very shortly. And I would like to start with Ilke.
I am here from Passa, Porta, the International House of Literature in Brussels. We do events throughout the year. We focus very much and more than we did before on talent development. We have a wide range of residency programs, and we do an international festival every 2 years.
Thank you very much. Yana?
My name is Yana Genova. I'm running the Sofia Literature and Translation House and the Next Page Foundation, which actually started the house in Sofia 6 years ago. We do predominantly international creative residencies for writers and translators, but we also do a lot of public events and trainings for literary translation. So our focus is on literary translation as a priority topic, and I'm with my other hat is of a cultural consultant on cultural policies, particularly in literature and books.
Thank you. I would like to add over to Inez.
Yes, my name is Inez Boogaarts. I've been a cultural manager and cultural consultant for some years now. I was in the past director of the International Poetry Festival and house in Rotterdam, and now I'm working mostly in the Netherlands and Germany and wherever you want to have me on transformation processes in cultural institutions, mostly on diversity and inclusion, but also on more general transformation processes.
And finally, Sophia.
Yes, hello. I am Sophia Grasper and I work at the Göteborg's Litteraturhuset, so the Gothenburg Literature House. And we are like a member-based or member-oriented organization. So our programming is partly the members' programs, and the members are not individuals but literary organizations or businesses like small publishing houses and magazines, and then we the staff consisting of 2 people also curate program during the whole year.
Thank you very much. We try to frame a little bit the discussion of this afternoon, and we were in different panels this morning. I would like to summarize very quickly some of the subjects. It was strategies, ideas concerning diversity and inclusion, it was financing, it was audience development, and it was also collaborations within the program as well as between institutions. And we came out with one word, and it was power. So the first thing I would like to ask you, to lay out to you, and you can answer in the order you like, is what from the discussions, well, focusing on the morning discussions, what question would resonate, does still resonate the most within you, and what would that question be?
Okay, so
Whoever likes to.
So in the group I was in, we had this, because as I told you, we have members and a small staff, and that means the members, they organize their own events in a way, and then we give them the keys literary in the hand, and then they do their thing. And we discussed this concept or as a metaphor, but also very concretely. What does it mean to give away the keys to your literature house? Is it like we discuss it as a carte blanche, or is it something you do that also requires a framework, and how does it look in our specific, what does this give away the keys means to us in our different contexts? So for me it was really interesting to hear from my colleague. For me, it's also very overwhelming to meet so many colleagues, because in Sweden we are not so many literature houses. So it was really interesting just to kind of meet yourself through meeting you, everybody. It's really, really valuable. So, yeah.
I was in the same discussion. It was very thought-provoking, and it was wonderful to see that as literary venues, organizers, that we really are all looking to go towards a more cultural equity oriented organization or programming. But the go-to of most of us is curatorship or co-curatorship. And when we discussed it, it was quite clear that that is still, to a certain extent, quite a safe option, because you're still in control to a certain extent, because you decide who does the curatorship and co-curatorship. But the challenge is how to go beyond that. How to, if you give the keys, what do you give? Is it the use of space? But to what extent is it also giving away a power? And I think this is to a certain extent it's the unknown, and it's out of our comfort zone, and this is where the challenge lies.
Yana?
I wished I could pick up on that keys metaphor, because we in Sofia, and also here the Robert Bosch Stiftung, I think part of their merchandise is a really nice red keychain saying a key to understanding. I don't dare saying that in German. And in Sofia we also produced a keychain as part of our merchandise, just to symbolize that we can, we are giving away those keys actually together with the keychain. But for me, I think since I have the privilege or perhaps the burden of remembering this kind of gatherings for the last 15 years or more, and being in this international cultural cooperation business. First of all, I have to say, I don't know how do you feel about it, but it's really exceptional what is going on here in terms of atmosphere and mutual understanding. Really, it's not just the setting, which just if you turn and take a look at it from here, it's not just the setting, but from what my general feeling from this morning, and that is something new, I think, on the background of all these international gatherings taking place in the last 15, 20 years, is that now there isn't a shared feeling of instability that is valid for everyone, East and West, and South and North, and big countries, small countries, big languages, small languages, and that does not only concern money. When I say instability, it's not about, but it's also the social changes, and it's not just the war or the changes that the sort of basic institutions that we kind of take for granted, including media, are being reshapen somehow. So this, I think it's a good moment. Any moment is good, but this is particularly important moment for all of us of rethinking perhaps what we have been doing in the last years and with our institutions. So it's a particularly good moment for self-reflection, and that would include all these basic questions: who owns the programs that we deliver? So it's clear who owns the buildings, the physical buildings, and most of us here are literature houses, and we deal with properties as well. And a lot of our time goes into, solving issues around properties. But this is not where our legitimacy comes from. It's not the building, and I'd like to thank the organizers that also organizations that don't have buildings have been invited, like literature festivals, but doing somehow similar work. So rethinking where does our legitimacy come from? I think it's for us, and doing that in international setting is particularly much more valuable.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I would
Inez?
like to. I would like to bridge the thing you just said. Is we in our group we were talking about audiences and audience development, and we had a small group, and it was a very intensive get together and sharing best practices also, and learning from each other. And at some point we were thinking about it is that we as cultural organizations and cultural professionals are doing so hard and so our best to attract audiences from everywhere. I mean, we have programs and projects and ideas and marketing plans and stuff like that. But sometimes we have the feeling that we forget who we're working for. We hope to get those audiences, but we actually have a hard time to reflect on, do those people want us? And we project all our wishes and our stuff to them, and we forget sometimes to ask them, is this something that you like to do? Is this something that attracts you? And I think it's to bridge the thing that you just said, Yana, is to reflect that also. We really want this so much, but we sometimes forget for whom we are doing this for. And talking about the audience issue is that we were, and then I bridge also to the question before about the power issue, is that we really have to. Audience is one thing of the work we are doing on for cultural organizations and also in the literature market and structure. But it's one of the things we do. And if we are reflecting this power issue, we have to reflect actually all the things we're working in within the management, in the programming, in the curating, with whom we are partners with. And also, of course, we're doing this for an audience, but we have to reflect on that also, I think.
Thank you very much. A lot of different issues. I think some of the keywords we have to go back to: instability, legitimacy, who decides what, which leads me to a question that, Sophia, you raised before, and I think it's a very important one. You said, who is your boss, but also who is the boss? Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, I will try. But as I also told you, feel free to interrupt me if I elaborate too much or too long. But because we have this special, the Gothenburg Literature House, as I told you, we are this Förening in Swedish. I think it's similar in German. Association. Förening. Yeah. So we have the members. So I am very aware of, so my board is consisting of some part of the members, and they work for free, no money. So the members are steering, they are my bosses, but I am also getting money to do this job, and I of course also can influence. So it's this dynamic of leading and being led. So in my case, the bosses are the board, which is some of the members, but also our money comes from the municipality, which is, so it's tax money. So it's very much, I am very aware of this. So it's this transfer, we get the tax money, money value, and then we give something back in another kind of value. So this is also a way. And then there is like, literature is my boss. No, but I mean, you also, I feel also responsible to the thing that kind of drove me to this, you know, this strange organism we know as literature. What is holding me still in its grip? So my own passion is a strong word, but let's use it. But yeah. So yeah,
let's not forget that it's like on the line on everything, that this is somehow this what we share. But what you said before, Ilke, I found very interesting. You said in the end, curating or programming are not the main issues. If I got you right, what are the main issues if it's not that?
It ties in with the question, who's the boss, right? Because
Yeah.
we know, I could give you the legal framework. It's quite easy to work with because you know the rules. You work with the rules. You have subsidies. You know how it works. But I think a more interesting one is what's the driving force? Because you as a stage, you put voices on stage and you amplify those voices. So to me, that's quite a powerful thing to do. And so you would have to be aware of that power. And to me, the actual driving force to reflect on whom does a stage belong to me, it's very much a cultural framework. Mm-hmm. So I think there is this constant responsibility we have to see how culture is revolving and how society is revolving. And it's so obvious that so many voices have been neglected for so long. They're sounding to some extent loud, to others extent still quiet, and I feel that is a responsibility to amplify these voices. So that's a driving force, and this is where the shift of power should go to.
Would you like to or would you like to add something to that, or
somehow goes back to what you just said about the voices that we give a stage to. And in the last panel, in the last group that I participated, we started talking about small languages, big languages, and the visibility of small languages at the international arena. But very, very quickly, we went beyond that topic, and people get really passionate about something completely different that has nothing to do with big versus small. And this is this principle of inclusiveness and dialogue that we want to promote in our programs. And each time we take decisions about our programs, how far do we go in that? And do we, for example, include outspoken right-wing voices into our programs? How do we take decisions about that? And do we do anything consistent in trying to get into a dialogue with radical people, radical voices? That's a big question. I don't have an answer for the organization that I'm running. Each time we tried, we failed to establish such a dialogue, just because you cannot get into a dialogue with somebody who does not respect the very principle of a dialogue. But that's it has to do with like whom do you give the stage to, in a way, and the keys.
Mm-hmm. And then to let go also, to not to try to control what's coming up and to be so generous in a way to let go and make others' decisions. I met just in the audience, not in the audience, but one of the participants from Berlin who give out their venue to all sorts of users in the field of literature in Berlin. And I asked her the question, Kateryna, oh, what do you do? I mean, you just let it happen? And she said, yes, we just let it happen. I think that is a new quality, management quality also, that you share the power with others. And that's not easy, I think, for us to do. Let go, give trust the partners, share power. It's a brave thing, a courageous thing to do.
I just want to quickly ask Sophia something. You said before that to give the keys and to give a carte blanche is not the same thing. Perhaps you can quickly elaborate on that, and then you can say, I will ask you about this power, to go back to the power question.
Okay. Yeah, so I hope I get this concept with the Förening and the members through. So when I speak about giving away the keys, it means to also find the right level of support, or make enough space, like not help too much but not too little. So you have to really have this dialogue, but it's not it's definitely not a carte blanche, but so different members have different needs basically, and you have to kind of tune in what is their thing, and if they don't really know, they want to try something, that is the thing. So some people just have to start doing something, and then things are happening along the way, and they make experiences that we can share and discuss and then develop. So I think in this very long time periods, and literature and time, it goes well together. So I allow myself to think very, very far ahead sometimes. So you trust somebody to just, literally, you just give the keys, and maybe I don't even. We also have events in other languages and such. So, but now that thing happened when I forgot the the question. But the
difference between giving the keys and the carte blanche. It's not a carte blanche. They have to be
afraid, and because we have this organization, which is a Förening, we have a set of rules. It's not there, but an agenda or a manifesto, which everybody who become a member must, of course, relate to this and say, I want to add this. I understand the concept, but this is my contribution, and this is how I connect. They all do different things. Not all of them are primarily literary organizations or businesses, but what they do with us have to connect with the whole in some way. But then, I am often surprised, and I definitely not always know best. So, but it's great fun to do this, give away the keys.
I think what I think is important is this act of giving away the keys could be a performative act, and I think that the real challenge is handing over the keys in order because you would want to or willing to share the house. It's a different thing, just giving away the keys for the weekend, or just thing like you could move in, and that means refurbishing the place, metaphorically speaking again. And I think that is where the real challenge is, because if you share that power, and it so easily remains abstract, but to me that's where the challenge is. It could be performative, but it's ideally it's just not going in that direction.
We were discussing this before because I was in this group, and I was thinking perhaps as women we shouldn't give away the keys or the power too quickly, because we are so generous then in sharing, and we should still establish some sort of ground rule where other sorts of diversity are accepted, and we shouldn't give away the microphone so quickly. But I was wondering, in your cases, in Germany it's very common, or German speaking, that the person who is curating is also announcing, giving a speech at the beginning of a reading, like taking a big role and being very, very physically in the thing. And we were thinking, is there a way is there a possibility to not do this? Do you have that sort of rule in your house? where you have to be there.
We have the opposite rule.
Okay.
Never give the microphone to the curator. Really, or to the programmer, or to me in many cases,
Okay.
or to a board member, deliberately.
Yes.
We invite moderators, sometimes two other people, then and we give them the power to shape the event.
And you don't do the introduction either.
No, very rarely. But we do have somehow a core audience. So only when we have events in different places other than the literature house itself, then somebody from the literature house talks about, so that we preserve somehow the association of that event with the house. But no.
Okay.
And with the festival in Rotterdam, we had a surprising, I would say for myself, a surprising experience that we went out with the festival to another part of the city where more people are living and community initiatives are there. And we wanted to sort of, cooperate with one of the neighborhood initiatives also based on storytelling. And we were actually surprised that they were not so like, oh, great that you're coming and that you want to cooperate with us. And they had like an attitude, so, okay, why do you want to cooperate with us? We're fine. We don't need you. You're like you're rich. You have a lot of personnel and you have interesting programs, but we don't need you. Don't think that we need you. And that was actually for our team a culture shock to acknowledge, okay, they're not waiting for us. We need them. And we really went into a long process of getting to know each other on their terms. And for me also and our team, it was really a culture shock to get to know that, there's other people out there doing great stuff without a lot of money, but with a completely different mindset. And they made us a bit, I would not say on the long term, but especially during the whole thing, more humble and to see and understand there might be other motivations to cooperate. And for me, it was a really, not life-changing, but at least for the festival and for the team, it was really a very worthwhile experience to see this kind of shifting also of power. And it made me think, yeah.
If we talk about apologizing, I was just thinking we had 3 women from African publishers at our house last week, and they basically said literature is for an elite and literature is a niche, and we don't have to apologize for that. And everybody who is interested we reach them, but we don't want to reduce any sort of complexity. That's not our aim. How do you react to this sort of this niche discussion and elitist discussion? And because we always say we want different audiences, but perhaps we are somehow, that's the blind spot. It's not possible with literature.
Well, I ask the question back, does those audiences want us? That's, I think, also a very important question that you have to ask yourself over and over again.
For us as a house of literature, we say that we work for curious people. So it doesn't really you don't have to have any school experience, no academic experience per se, but we invite interviewers who prepare well, who make sure that they read well, and they ask questions that anyone can understand. And if you're curious, you can sort of ride along on the discussion, and the answers are interesting and nuanced. So that's I think it's a good it's a helpful focus.
Yes. I will ask perhaps one more question, and the floor, so to speak, is open for the audience to ask questions as well. Yana, you said before the challenges about the instability of the world and how we might want to redefine ourselves. After the afternoon session or the sessions we had for all 4 of you, what would be the biggest challenges you can identify for your work or your institution for the next month or years? It's a big question, but...
and it's very different perspectives.
Yeah.
Like the next month is very practical things about the house again, because this big gentrification process going on around our house. But the longer period is maybe more about, in the afternoon, I was in a group about kind of rediscovering the literature as a collective form of art. And to go back to that question about elite, I think we shouldn't, I mean, sometimes it's a big freedom in being very specific and small scale, and we had a lot of really good examples of, in a way, small projects or formats or things going on, collaborate things in literature. But they're very powerful when you get the literary kind of dynamics going between the reader and the writer, for example. So to be very specific or very nerdy or small or really, I think there's great power in that. And like it's more a question of how much, how the adding, you can do several things. I think, and you can kind of work with the relationships between the connections between all of these different formats and projects and upphovsmän, organizers, yeah, parts.
I think we're always, because this is like the major question that we're all confronted with, all of us around the table, or the digital virtual table. One of the things that came up this afternoon was it's such a visual culture. So there's like Netflix. There's so much on offer, and that we are challenged to compete with this offer. And I think it's either we try to compete and do incredible stage performances, or we just perhaps choose or dare to choose for the small, intimate format. And I think there is something really beautiful in the metaphor of being a house of literature. This is where literature is at home, and ideally you have an open door. The name Porta is this suggestion of an international passport, so everyone is welcome. There's also this idea of passer la porte. You could come in, you're invited in, and if the threshold is really low, because this is the challenge, I think this is sort of the second challenge as an organization. But if we could continue to create that intimacy for literature in a home where everyone feels welcome, I think that would be a great achievement.
Yes, thank you.
Maybe also is that to reflect on that is that I think we should not be afraid of trying out many things. There's this negative idea that people read less and less. I think that people read more and more. If you take into account all the iPhones we use all the time and all the things that are being written and you read a lot, that you can also embrace that as a new challenge. And one of the things we had been talking about also in the afternoon is about the role of podcasts. That is a huge not new anymore, but it's a huge resource where readers and authors and poets come all together, and you have your own time and space to hear and to reflect on that. And there's so many other issues that online, offline, where reading and hearing and poetry and literature are coming together, not maybe under big names, but there's so many little things happening. And I would say just embrace it, try it out, and fail and try again.
Well, I wanted to say something completely different. I'm sorry that it will go in another direction. But because the question was on challenges, and we can all talk about challenges until tomorrow morning. But for next week, I have two challenges. One is the flood in the basement of the house. That is a constant challenge. And because of the spring showers, it became really problematic. But the other issue, I think that we have to decide on, to take a strategic decision on, is how political we want to be actually in our programming. Because at least in Sofia, we started with that commitment and passion to create exactly a safe haven and a house for literature, meaning by extension mostly professional, so people who are professionally dealing with literature and translation, to have a safe, to have a place where the community can meet and discuss. So our audiences would come second in that, the first thing. And now I think it's really imperative that we go, generally speaking, more political than we thought we would need to be in the very beginning. Just to give a very simple example, we have a residency program, and this year we received like 60, 70 applications, and we have money for 15, basically. And you have to prioritize and take decisions on the basis of various variables. And one of the decisions that I have personally taken was to give fellowships to 2 Belarusian writers living in exile, perhaps not necessarily the best writers in the world in terms of literary quality, but as somebody feeling responsible towards also the Bulgarian audience and how the public debate in Bulgaria goes on, I thought it's really important that we have a living Belarusian writers in Sofia rather than in Berlin, or in, and present these people to the Sofia audience. So this is a political decision in a way. Now, nothing to do with elitism of literature and this kind of thing.
Thank you very much. We have 6 minutes for questions, if you like to, or comments, short comments. And Dick wanted to add something. I'm sorry.
I was going to add something, but I think most of the things that I was going to add have already been added. So I think it's probably best to go to the audience. And one of the ironic things was that I'd heard this metaphor about giving away the keys before, and that was one of the things that I was going to mention, but it's been mentioned a lot. It then changed into not giving away the microphone or not giving away the microphone, which puts me in a difficult position because I wasn't going to give the microphone away. What I'm going to try and do is wind my way into the chairs with this long cable trailing behind me and give you an opportunity to either make a comment or ask a brief question. We don't have long, so we really only have about 5 minutes. But anybody that would like to make a comment or ask a question, please feel free. And I'll see if I can get to you with this microphone. Okay.
There's a bird.
No takers. Well, from my point of view, and Geza's, I'm sure. Is there one? Okay. Okay. Let's see if I can do this.
Yes.
That's kind of you.
Thank you.
I'm not going to give you the microphone. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna yell. You really don't. Oh, I didn't know that. I just wanted to pick up on what you just said, Yana, because we have been confronted in several occasions with the problem of are we allowed to invite Russian authors in Germany? And I think it's a very, very difficult question because, of course, we do not want to offend our Ukrainian friends or Belarusian friends, but even between them, it's complicated. And I was really surprised that for the first time, we were confronted with this kind of issue that was never a problem in our Western society. And all of a sudden, we have to take a position of whether we can invite artists, poets from countries that are not popular at the moment. So this is just a comment. I don't have a solution for this.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the comment. Anyone else? Okay. In that case, I think we'll leave that, and then we can move to the next session. Do you have any concluding remarks, Geza?
Oh, I would like to thank all of you for this discussion. We didn't have much time. I think for the amount of time we had, we could touch lots of points we've been thinking about this morning and this afternoon. And I think the shared feeling of instability and the shared knowledge of our political responsibility are some 2 points we can take and try to integrate in the work to come. Thank you very much.
So if you could bear with us just...
The facilitator of this festival here at LCB. Still wonderful Friday afternoon. There are some clouds in the back, so maybe it's rain. I thought we have 4 more minutes because they stopped earlier, but we don't have. And talking about the boss before on the former panel, the bosses are the technicians, of course. Thank you very much. Well, acting through language. We are here sitting. And we will focus, try to focus on language and exchange, talking, I think, some political issues, like it was the end of the former panel. We will talk about curating, programming, transnational literature. First, here on the stage, I'm very happy for this exciting discussion and to have a wonderful participants here. And I start in alphabetical order with Jenny Bohn, this there from you on the left side. She's a curator, dramaturg, and she's working at the Burg Hülshoff Center for Literature and is a project manager for the cooperation of different projects. She worked on theater. And would you like to add something in this short biographical notes?
Oh, thanks.
You have to take the microphone. Nothing to say. Okay. The next one in the alphabetical order is Yasemin Çongar. She made a career as a journalist. You even interviewed Salman Rushdie or Julian Assange. You worked as an editor, you're an essayist, you're also a translator. You founded this platform K24, a literature review, and you are a founder and director of the Istanbul Literature House. I think it was 2018, and it has a special name.
Yes.
Maybe you can explain this name.
Thank you, Thomas. Yeah, we founded it in 2018. The house opened its doors, as we say it, on October 1st, 2018. And it has a name. It is Kıraathane. Kıraat means in Ottoman and Arabic reading, lezung. So Kıraathane used to be a lezung house a house for reading. Basically, it was the coffee house, the old style coffee house in the Ottoman times, but it's where people got together, and you should be mindful of the fact that most people were illiterate, so there would be a few people in the community who could actually read. Either it was the newspaper or a book, or even the holy book, perhaps, and that person would read to the others, so that would be a reading house. So we wanted to use the name when we knew we wanted to start a literature house, but we thought the name was very appropriate.
Thank you very much. You hear we are all not native speakers. We try to do our best. And feel free, I think this is free speech now here, also to say something in your mother tongue if you want, and maybe translate by yourself. Kateryna Mishchenko. Kateryna Mishchenko is a Ukrainian writer, curator, publisher. She speaks perfectly German. And editor of Prostory, a magazine of art, literature. She was an editor of Prostory, magazine of art, literature, and social critic. I think you worked together there. Yes. You were both, yeah. You are co-founder and editor of the publishing house Medusa. You lived originally in Kyiv, now you fled to Berlin. Yes. You want to add something to that? No?
No, thank you.
Everybody told me you are an intellectual.
I don't know. I think all the people from cultural media field can be called so in general, but...
Please speak to the microphone.
Yeah. Should I
repeat?
Should I come out as an intellectual here? Only in the sense that all of the people who are working in cultural field, who are publicly present, also in media, translators, they are all journalists, they are all intellectuals. At least should be. Yeah.
Last but not least, Nelia Vakhovska. She's a translator, literary critic, writer. She works for the Office of Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung Foundation in Kyiv, and you came from Kyiv and you go back to Kyiv. You work also for the Cities of Translators. Thank you for coming. What is the Cities of Translators exactly? What do you do?
Thank you, Thomas. Cities of Translators is a big and very interesting project by Toledo and Deutscher Übersetzerfonds. Which is run for at least 3 years, as far as I know, perhaps even longer. And it presents different metropolis, like different cities, from the point of view of literary translators. And together with my colleague Claudia Date, I've been happy to curate and to organize the Cities of Translators Kyjiv, like 1 year ago, and this year we continue with some sub-projects about Kyiv and Ukraine in war or under war.
I think most of us understand as a Literaturvermittlerin, what we do is in German Literaturvermittlung, and we had learned that there is no English word for that. You need more words to explain in English what it is. It's curating presentation, promoting literature, it's educational question and question of translation. For me, all of you are translators. In a broader sense, means you build bridges. Of course, in a narrow sense, a translator is something different. It's a person who works concrete on a text, on a book, on a poem, for example. But I start with you, Yasemin. Do you agree that you are also, I mean, you're also a translator, but in your work as a director of the Literature House in Istanbul, do you feel as a translator, as a person who is also influencing, you make decisions, you try to make, I think, understanding the audience, to build a bridge between the authors and the audience?
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. Yeah, I am also a translator. So, I do translate books as much as I can find time. I do agree to a certain extent, but I think it goes to the idea behind the title of the program here, Acting Through Language. And I think we all agree, and I think it was also in the program, that if you run a literature house, if you are curating a literature house program, you are actually acting through language. That's what you're doing. And I think an acting through language, any act through language, is in itself a translation, has to be a translation of sorts, whether between languages, between concepts, between ideas, and between, it could be between traditions. Yesterday, when we were flying from Istanbul, I was reading this book on the plane, a book by the American author Annie Dillard, just a book of essays. And she said, one sentence just stayed with me. And she says, I never saw a tree that was no tree in particular. And it's a very simple sentence. I never saw a tree that was no tree in particular. And for all of us who deal with literature and translation and this kind of work, it's not even new. We know that. But acting through language is exactly that, I was thinking afterwards, to find that particularity, to reach that particularity, to emphasize that, to take it out. So it's all about nuances. It's all about interpretation. It's all about translation. It's all about going against the official language, the official rhetoric, you can say the ugly words, as we heard in the George Orwell discussion. The French and German the translators of the new editions of 1984 made a great point of all those words. So it is really creating your own words, your new language, and using your language in the best way, but also learning others, learning yourself and others, through languages. So yes, I don't want to talk too long, but this is translation. Acting through language is also an act of translation.
Nelia, for you, is this kind of blah blah that I think we all are translators because you work very concrete as a translator? Or do you agree in this broader sense of understanding of translation?
So 1 year ago, I would have disagree with the metaphor of bridges. I would have screamed, I'm not an architect. I'm working only in language, into language, with language, and actually not with realities. And actually about the ugly words, up to some extent, even the ugly words should and can be translated. So we, up to in my opinion, the concept of translation has been interpreted very bright, and we are all idealistic enough to make a metaphor of it, to make translation very close, to bring it very close to the concept of communication, of culture, actually, of intercultural functioning of humanity. But there is the ugly side of translation. This actually work is handwerk, what we do every day. And even Putin or Hitler have the translators and interpreters. I'm sorry, but this is true. And actually, what I came up today to this podium is the thesis that translation in this idealistic interpretation doesn't exist for me for now because of the war, because I'm not a person of language anymore, because now I'm a person of living, of surviving, and the language doesn't correspond anymore with the reality I'm facing now. And nowadays, the concept of translation has changed for me. And nowadays, translation stays only in words. And while we are working and acting through words, we got like a new agency in this new political field and circumstances. Because we are like advocating for our country, And it is very, very far from that understanding of translation as this beautiful working with literature, with metaphors, with senses. Now it's something like being an activist. For me, being a translator in some international, and international is another keyword for today for us, it's kind of being an activist and not only being a translator.
Is it for you similar, Katja, that acting through language can mean a lot? As Nela said, politicians, of course, also act through language.
Yes, I was asking myself what it means to Vermittlung, yes, these German words. Okay, let's use maybe this word translation. How to translate the experience from unsafe space to a safe one. What meaning will have these words, these stories, if you listen to them sitting here, for example? If it will be the same, or if it will be understandable? It is a question for me. But maybe not so important as another one, how to enable people to some solidarity action through stories or through language. So not to make my or Nelia's or some other people from Ukraine experience understandable. Maybe it's not understandable, even on the physical level. There are just some, but I think we don't need this empathy or this sympathy, or I don't know. I think we really need solidarity, and it can be built in a rational way. We shouldn't look for pathetic words, for some metaphorical figures to describe this experience. I think we should use our skills as translators, as people who understand local contexts, to inspire people, to help us, to fight with us, to express solidarity and to act. And I think it is a very comprehensive task, but it is a translation for me today, maybe, in this performative aspect.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to that political issue, but I wanted to ask also Jenny. She's working mostly as a curator and the dramaturg, but I learned that you also translated into digital forms. And is this also a kind of translation for you, or this is too far away, what your work is doing, what you're doing?
I don't want to, but I think I have to disagree to call me a translator. Translation is for me an artistic production. And I'm not an artist, I'm not a writer, I'm a facilitator. I give space, I'm programming, that's kind of power, we heard it before. But yes, and there is no English word for it, like Vermittlung, or we say also in German, wir übersetzen Dinge in andere Kontexte. But in English, I would say I don't translate things into other contexts, I put things into other contexts. Mm-hmm. So my institution is called Center for Literature for a reason, not called Literaturhaus, because we understand ourselves as an interdisciplinary house, production house. So it's natural for us to put our baseline is language, perhaps also not literature, or literature as a language. And so, yes, we put it also before COVID. We saw the digital space as a space for social interaction, and that is my special interest. And yes, we did also with translation, and or to make inclusive work, like people who are blind have to have the screen reader, but an artistic, like poem or lyric poetry written by not written, read by a screen reader is really ridiculous and awful. So we asked artists to record poets. So, yes, that's something I do, but it's not a translation, an act of translation.
Thank you for disagree. I like that. And but I would say you make decisions. So you are a kind of influencer also. So you decide what will happen at your work.
Yeah, but I am influenced. So it's really, I ask people, I have perhaps a feeling for topics, but then I ask people what they are thinking of these topics and ask them to fill a class. Perhaps I give you the class, but you have to fill the class. And so I see my work. So no artistic way of production for really the thing of facilitating, giving the space. I can't say anything else about my work. But I do like this.
I wanted to focus on that because the panel before they were also talking about power, and I think we all are in a way locally situated in a town. Some now in another town to flat. We are locally, or we are situated, or we're at home in a language, or in two maybe. We have a mother tongue, but we work transnational or international. But of course, we are influenced, as you said, by political situations, by economic situations, by changes, by war, as you said. So how strong is this influence to your work as a translator in a classical way and also as a curator? So do you reflect this situation now much stronger than you did before? Does the war in Ukraine change the situation? How did it change? And there was COVID before, there will be, and there is a climate change now. Does it do something? They change it. Does it do something to your work?
Can I say something? Maybe it's not a direct answer to your question, but I understand what you said about translation and not liking beautiful metaphors. But I didn't, when I used it as a metaphor or translation in a more general sense, I didn't mean it as a beautiful metaphor, and I really meant it very politically. So to go back to politics, because the situation in Ukraine, what we need to do, what I feel myself obliged to do as the director of the Literature House in Istanbul, but also as a citizen of the world, as a reader, to understand what's going on, to know, to fight against my own ignorance about it, and to understand what's going on, and to go beyond the official rhetoric, official language of what the Turkish government, for example, is telling me what's going on in Ukraine, and or the very pro-Russian media are telling me what's going on in Ukraine. That is an act of translation in the sense that I don't speak Ukrainian. I did study Russian, but I don't speak it well enough. I cannot translate from Ukrainian or Russian, for example, definitely not from Ukrainian. But I can, if I know, if I go to the sources, if I go to people like you, if I go to the writers and, artists and other individuals out there who are living in it. Like we heard Yevgenia speak yesterday at the opening. I did translate Yevgenia's war diaries. And for me, this was a transforming experience. That, yes, it was actual translation because I could do it from English. And she wrote in German, maybe to help that translation process, but also learning about something and providing platforms, creating spaces for people come together and speak about things so that we, the ignorant, can be informed and better learned and understand. As you said, making what's happening in an unsafe situation understood in a safe place. That is translation. That's all I meant. So it's not just this beautiful. I mean, I know I started with the tree, but particularity, nuance are always lost in the rhetoric. Translation is an act of focusing on that very nuance, as you know better than I do.
And as Sasha Manet-Salzman yesterday said, we're not lost in translation, but she said we are like nothing without translators. and what we need the translations. And that's, I don't want to speak too much about definition, but coming back to that, how much are you influenced? I mean, this is too big question for you, coming from Ukraine, but how much are we all influenced, ask myself, by things? Of course, we do some program about climate change, maybe. We did not do a program about COVID, we did something else. We tried technical things. But how much are we influenced, and shall we really be influenced stronger in our work?
I think that's another point. Like, we are not political institutions. We are places to think. So, like, we are not a place. Like, we are a place for activists, but I'm not an activist. And I think it's also pathetic of institutions to speak about it. It's more to give the space, like you said, and topics of climate change and everything. That's something else, because it will be there, and we have to work with it. Also in a kind of what is artistic production, how to come together and all this stuff. But it's really another point. So for me, it's now a little bit difficult to make the bridge between the war and climate change, to say something.
Well, in the former panel, Yana at the end from Sofia, she said she's thinking a lot about this political work we do. And I think it is a political work, always.
But then that's like the last round we were sitting together, and if you see it political, and we have to deal with more and more right-wing politics, and the difference, I think, is they took our language. More or less, they speak the same language, and that was something we spoken about, and how to speak with them when the enemy has the same language. Not the enemy, but kind of. And how to deal with it, that I think is something we had to speak about together. Like, are we speaking with them? Are we expose them what to do? But you have strong opinions on that, because you had good points.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into details, but just about this, the right-wingers, let's say, appropriating the language. And I think we should stick to our own words and to our own language. Just because they're using the same, you cannot leave it aside. It's just, again, I mean, I keep repeating myself perhaps, but it's again about the nuances. It's about content. They're using the words. But if they are, defending the right to equality and freedom of expression, truly, then we don't have a problem, perhaps. Because right to equality, goes to the heart of it. If everyone is equal, if they are for equal rights for everyone, no matter what their ethnicity is, no matter what their language is, no matter what kind of minority they are from, they could be a Syrian immigrant, they could be a Kurd in Germany. If they're that, then maybe they're coming our way, and that's good. But it's not that. They're just using the good words. They are appropriating the good words, and it's empty. The content is not there. The real nuances, the particularities are not there. That's why we have to really own up to it and keep speaking about those things.
Actually, I just strongly agree with you. You might have known that there is some problem with Russian language in my country, like because of the context, because of the war, because of the some over emotional reaction. There are some chances that Russian will be banned, like complete cancelled in Ukraine, which this is the position that I don't support. Of course, as a person who works with language in this very technical way as well, actually, this handwork, I am strongly convinced that the language is only a tool, and there is a way how we use this tool. The languages do not participate at wars.
they are misused by some ideologists, even not the war parties, but some concrete ideologies are using the language and are creating like very, very ugly forms of language. So for me, actually, this question of being into the language, being in this structure, it's the same in the question of Ukrainian Selbstständigkeit, sovereignty.
Sovereignty, yeah.
We all use it, we can keep it, we can actually make it better. And the one part and the other one, actually, how our culture and our language are always political. Everything in our society is political, is being influenced by the politics. And in our very specific situation, I can say, so my personal experience has been very crucial, because for like some 2 months, I've been separated from my mother tongue. I couldn't write in Ukrainian, so it means I couldn't translate as my job. I tried to write in German because there was some very existential feeling that the reality and the language are that much separated that the words are actually kind of, they have no substance. They do not express what I'm feeling because I have no words for these feelings, actually. And therefore, I've been in this situation of not believing in my own language. Only some other language, like German, helped me to come out of this situation and just to translate, sorry for this metaphor, my screaming in some language at least, perhaps because it's a foreign language, because I don't really think that I'm that good on it. And when I'm not good, then the language is allowed not to be that good and not that precise, and then it's okay. Yeah, like this picture of the world where the words are not that precise and do not direct correspond to my experience, then I can be okay with that. So perhaps if our language is being taken away by the counterparts, perhaps we should try to translate it in some other languages, even in some languages of our neighbors. Perhaps therefore we are here now.
Are you, Katja, cut off of Ukrainian language now because you're in Berlin?
Yeah, I'm cut off. I think I can understand Nelia, but my problem is a different one. I have words, but I think I have no feelings.
Oh.
So because I also didn't write anything in Ukrainian from the beginning of war, but I write so much in German that I never experienced it in my life, and I think I switched to really all my activities to this German-speaking space, and somehow it feels more constructive and maybe more safe. So my fear is that Ukrainian language will be the bridge to my repressed feelings, and I don't want to go there now. Maybe sometime, maybe translators can survive better in the situation because they have this safe haven of another language, but the possibility to work and to act at the same time, not to feel like stoned. Stoned is maybe a bad. It's a bad, but you understand. No, not to be frozen. But try to work somehow. Yeah.
I remember many years ago I traveled in the United States and there was written it was Christmas time, wish you a safe Christmas, and I was loving, I said, nobody here wishes safe Christmas, and now I think we are there. It's in this discussion now, it was several times used the word safe, and coming to the question before, what Tanja Graf from Munich asked, to be unsafe? Is it possible, allowed now in a German literature house to invite Russian writers? I wanted to ask, because I think this is a point. I mean, how open, how democratic are we, should we be? There was a kind of scandal in Germany. Uwe Delkam, a writer in Dresden, with a bookseller who they had some sympathy for right-wing political movement. And when I came by taxi here yesterday, we had a discussion with a driver who said, I don't believe in the media, what they say about the war in Ukraine. I think it's something different. So it was very strange. And I asked myself, how open can we be, shall we be? When we were in Norway, in Oslo, many years ago, the participants wondered how open the literature house there was at that time. There were right-wing politicians also discussing, and many of us said, oh, we would not invite these people to our houses. How open can we be? Can we translate now? Shall we translate new literature from Russian, publish it, invite writers from Russia?
Perhaps, so I'm not seeing myself in this position of owning the truth, like of being able to tell you should do it like that, and in any way something other. I'm not in that position. Even if I'm representing here the victims of war, the country which has been actually a victim. But I can tell you a story about the project we are working now about the cities of translators, Kyjiv. We've asked several translators how they've spent the first 2 months of the war. And the questions were like very open, and everybody could write actually what she or he wanted to say. And it was like the idea was just to ask people, where are you? How are you in that moment? Can you speak? Can you write? And I've been very surprised that almost every third person has written something like, I'm still translating from Russian, but I ask who the author is and where it would go. Some person has written, I quitted all the new translatings from Russian, but for the last one, the honorarium for the last one, I've finished the translation, I've taken the honorarium, and I sent it to Ukrainian army. And a lot of people have written that the translation, even if they are not really able to work and have to struggle with their feelings and their unsafety, like existential unsafety, they've written like, my laptop and my language are my weapons. And the only weapons I have in this situation, and I gonna use it, and therefore I'm translating. And therefore some people have written that they can't translate poetry and nothing, high literature, nothing like that, but the news from Ukraine, because they want to bring this information to the other countries. So I would say we don't know. Also, I'm not sure that I can tell you if you are allowed or not allowed, or what you should do with your programs. But I think the thing of translation is actually to ask and to watch and to seek for nuances and to put questions. So there is no direct answer, but there are always a lot of questions which should be put before the answer will be found.
To this question of whether we can invite Russian writers or engage them in our programs these days, and to what Tanya said, we did invite a Russian journalist a while ago to the house for World Press Freedom Day celebration on May 3rd. But we invited this journalist, Georgian-born Kateryna Mishchenko, who was the news director and anchor of the Doge TV, TV Rain, and of course who quit her job. Her husband quit his job with the censorship law and decided to leave the country. And she came and gave us an extremely, I should say, honest speech about where Russia is, where Putin has taken the country, where a majority of population perhaps is, what happened to press freedom, how it happened, and what happened in Donbass since 2014, and her own experiences about it, and their inability to counter that, and their belief that there could be things done until a certain time, but no more. That's why she's leaving. So to hear that very honest perspective was very important to me, and I think to us. So I just want to say, I mean, it's a very difficult decision, perhaps not, because you don't want to insult anyone. There's a time for everything, perhaps. But I should just emphasize that we shouldn't generalize. There's nothing Russian. You know, you said what's German literature in the, you know, like, what is Russian? I mean, there are also those Russians who are opposing this regime, who are opposing the war, who are opposing the invasion. I'm sure there are, and I know some of them, there are Russian writers, literary writers, who feel themselves in hell right now because of what's been going on. I mean, I think they're probably writing and looking for ways of expressing their dismay and perhaps, you know, helping the situation change. The question for us is, do we need to find ways to help that effort, if that effort is out there, and not just erased just because they're Russian?
So, if I understand right, you mean to support the kind of dialogue?
Yes, yeah, be in dialogue, or if they're writing something, to be aware of it, translate it, whatever. But I mean, at least not to just, you know, just not to postpone any engagement with any Russian, you know, to an unknown date.
Would you agree with that?
Oh, it's a difficult question. My publishing house made a book about Putin 2015. And that time I had a feeling that we in Ukraine should understand Russia more, or should know Russia more in order to to understand this politics and why this kind of internal politics was projected on Ukraine and what it means for us. To know the enemy better, it was my idea. And now I think, I don't know, I had discussions with my colleagues here about this inviting, not inviting, dialogue, etc. I think Ukrainians have the right not to be on the same panel, and they have the right to refuse of it. It shouldn't be seen like something emotional or something like that. I think it's also in context of this safe space something important for people. But who am I to forbid or to give some instructions? But I think it is a bit hypocritical position to celebrate Russian culture, Russian authors all this time, and to be kind of fan of all this Russian art, not only all these Russian oligarchic institutions, and now to say stop, cancel everything, not to differentiate and exclude yourself from this critical self-reflection also on your own mistakes, on your own views of or inspiration of all this big culture, and ignoring Ukrainian culture or seeing Ukrainian culture, hearing Ukrainian voices through the lens of big Russian culture. That's why I think that boycott can be maybe a too simple decision. But at the same time, I think it's interesting to speak with Russian writers, I don't know, intellectuals, in order to understand what happened, that no one expected such kind of war, and how could it be just ignored all the time, and how could all the wars organized by Russia from the year 2000 be ignored, and this continuum of war politics wasn't seen. I think there are interesting Russian writers who can participate in this kind of discussion. But if you really want to understand and not to whitewash Russian politics by means of culture, I think this question of intention is important. But as I said, I think Ukrainians have right not to not to be part of this, Verbesserungsunterricht, oder wie sagt man, is learning from mistakes.
Yes.
Because I have also one little story. Just before the war, I think it was the beginning of February, I was participating in a German talk show, and some strange, really horrible FSB man was invited, like I don't know, person from some center of research. I don't, as usual, you know, all these centers of research
Like
where
intellectual.
Sense or how to say represent some narratives, etc. And I was with him on this discussion. And afterwards, after the war, the big war started, end of February, I was again invited to this talk show, and I asked editor, "Will this FSB man be present?" It was like an irony, and she told, "You know, we tried to understand." But now that's why they always were invited just to hear this narrative, to hear these messages. But now we see what they wanted. Now we understood. And somehow I also think so many years there were so-called Putin-Versteher here, or people who said we should understand Russia, we should understand Putin. Finally, everything is clear. Come to Ukraine and you will see what he wanted and what today's Russia is, unfortunately. That these my thoughts. I don't have any prescription.
Thank you very much. We have 2 more minutes.
Yeah. I just wanted to add, from our institution point of view, last year we just did program like thinking about, and I think we all think about like this transnational exchange and discourse. So we did a program called Post-Westphalia to think about that this nation, this concept of nation is not our concept anymore. And then we don't have an answer of this kind of the war. Like to be, yes, now we are in this discussion of nations, and therefore it's really hard to answer, are you inviting Russians? Are you because we thought that it's not more our discourse to think about this.
Maybe we don't have the answers. We try to discuss, to ask questions about translation, about language, about how open can we be. We did not talk, we don't have the time about interdisciplinary, which is a wide field. We can maybe go on another time. Thank you very much. All of us, we don't have the truth, we know that. But I think it's very important that we don't talk only about truth and fake, but of truth and lies also. So sometimes it's important to use clear words. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. A completely amazing conversation, so thanks very much indeed for the contributions. And also thank you for taking up all of the time so I don't need to be put in compromising situations with a microphone. So, what I would like is just another round of applause for all of the panelists, these panelists and the last set of panelists for contributing in that way to the event. So thank you very much.